It's my pleasure to introduce the panel. We've had such fun, so I really want to thank IIHS. We've had such fun over the past 6 months in conceiving this, and finally it's come alive, and I'm so glad that all of you are here to witness it. We conceived this as a panel on mapping in different ways, and we wanted to bring people who are doing mapping in different ways. So we have three amazing map makers with us. Sudharak Olwe is a Mumbai-based photojournalist since 1988. He's worked as a press photographer with all the leading newspapers in India. His photographs, some of which you can see here as well, capture the grit and resilience that's evident in both rural and urban communities across the country. His work has been exhibited all over the world in Mumbai, Delhi, and in Sweden, in Portugal, in the Netherlands, in places like LA and DC, and also across Asia in cities like Dhaka. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 2016 for his documentaries on maternal and child mortality. How many Padma Shris do you all know? I know? One in the house. Uh, he's currently the photo editor for the Marathi newspaper Lokmat. Sudharak, thank you so much for being with us. May I please invite you on stage? He's also a resident of Viva Vikhroli. All the cool people in the world live in Vikhroli. So all those who are not here, like seriously, I don't know where you all are living. Come on over. It's too late now though. Real estate prices have gone up a lot. So you should have moved in some years ago. Uh, Jasmine Lovely George is a TEDx speaker, lawyer, and a sexual and reproductive health advocate from India. She's founded Hidden Pockets, a startup working on access to sexual and reproductive health um, in cities. She's passionate about changing technology spaces and making them inclusive for people of all genders. We like. She's also a member of research at Transnational Feminist Collective. Jasmine, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Anica Mann is a consultant with Tata Trust and the India country team lead for Global Xplorer. Yay! She was a 2017 Yes Global Institute Fellow. Yes is in the news these days. Yes, yes, we like you. Uh, and an art advisor for Delhi Art Gallery. In addition to writing extensively about arts and culture, Anika was a research associate at the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, as well as a researcher at Kyoto University. Anika, thank you so much. Welcome aboard. So, to our panelists, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions around some themes. The first is, mapping as empowerment. Then maybe the dangers of mapping. Okay, mapping is empowering, but it's also dangerous. Then we want to talk about mapping as an exercise in memory. And finally, around technology and the futures of mapping. So, just to start with each of you, can you tell us just briefly about your work and what mapping means to each of you and the work that you do? So, Dharak, do you want to start?
I've been photographing this city from last 30 years. So it's a kind of a great mapping actually with my camera. I've been to the richest to the poorest in the city. And yeah, it's a very important document as as the history goes on, and these images become the part of that legacy of rich experience of education with those pictures. Yeah, so photography is very important when you do mapping of any city or document. I will say documenting a city or document any space issues which we're covering from last so many years. Yeah, then photography is the fort for the mapping the city.
History and geography, both.
Both way.
Both. Jasmine?
Good afternoon, everybody. I got into mapping through walking. I'm a hardcore loiterer and I love walking. I grew up in Delhi and I hated the image Delhi had in general because I love walking and I grew up in the east side of Delhi, Shadra. So I remember when we started, when the whole Nirbhaya thing happened and everybody was mapping unsafe places in Delhi. Some of my places where I grew up, where I was staying currently, Mehroli, everything was mapped as unsafe and I hated it. So I thought, okay, why not just start walking these places, collect photos, and then just show people, this is how it looks, experience it yourself. So we started like that, and then I got into my project called Hidden Pockets, and we have a chapter called Pleasure Pockets where we started telling people, let's map your favorite parts of your city and how do you experience it. So that's how I got introduced into mapping, and then history happened. But yeah, that's the initial starting. Yeah.
Thank you. Anika?
Uh, I studied history of art and archaeology for over 11 years. And how I got into Global Explorer and archaeology was curiosity about the full human history or the full South Asian history in India. I was interested in yogini traditions and the esoteric in Hinduism and Buddhism, but it was so difficult for me to go to the site and find the site and find the geographical location. Luckily for me, I discovered this project, Global Explorer, and Tata Trust. I am a consultant with Tata Trust, was interested in bringing this platform here to India to not only find archaeological sites that are previously undiscovered, but also monitor looting in these sites. And I think that really, really inspired me as to being part of something that helps preserve India's culture. And that's where this mapping exercise started.
So again, starting with you, let's talk about the communities because all of you are mapping different things. But who are the communities that you are mapping for, and how does this mapping exercise help them? So who is Global Explorer mapping for, and
Global Explorer is essentially mapping for the governments of those countries so that they can protect their cultural treasures. This is of value. It is in the black market. Over $1 billion worth is being trafficked. So it does it for the governments. But on the other hand, this project deploys boots on the ground. You go to an archaeological site, you do field survey. But one of the most critical things that we want to focus on in India is engage the people living besides those sites with those sites, not only in a historic and an archaeological way, but the different ways in how they can interact and even become entrepreneurship with that site. How they can handle tourism that comes their way as well.
so excellent, Jasmine, Sudharak, who are y'all? So when you started Hidden Pockets, did you have like you said it's yourself and walking, but now Hidden Pockets is who is Hidden Pockets serving?
So when we started mapping, we realized that I was telling people to go to that part of the city, and people were not going. And that was the first time I realized women or people from certain gender are not used to navigating city in a certain way. We go to our office, we go to our workplace, we do functional movements. We can't go beyond that. And this is something that even got reflected in the previous film, Still City, that people have images of certain part of the city. So South Delhi people had this image about East Delhi. East Delhi people had this image about South Delhi. So we thought, okay, so people had this problem, and at the same time, we were also mapping public health centers. So we specifically look for sexual and reproductive health centers, and we tell people which are the places where you can get abortion for. So I was telling people, and people were not making the move. So then I realized I needed to tell them more about the city. How does it feel? How does it look? It does this stereotypes that we have. There's more to that place. So we started creating images. We started creating portfolios, videos to give people a feel, and then with time, people started coming with us to these places. So it was telling people like, so we started in Delhi and now we're in 5 different cities. And it's interesting that the same people, like I think in the previous movie, I'm referring a lot because it directly talked to me, the movie, where a person said that how is that people in the Bombay do not know about what is East Bombay. But this is how we live our lives right now. We live in isolation. We have a very limited understanding of our city. So in our work, we are telling people to get out of your own comfort zone, and we are giving them a little bit of tool that maybe we'll walk with you, or we give you a little bit of idea of this is how the other cities look like.
What we group of photographers and fellow photographers, we go to the any corner of the city, we document it, and we share these pictures at festivals to start a dialogue. And then they kind of come and say, "Oh, we've been never to this kind of a places earlier." We at the same time we try and point out the issues also as well as Parmesh, that if something is happening in Mahul, so we turn as a group of photographers and document that tragedy to the people, so it reaches more faster and it reaches to the um, policymakers, but they are deaf and dumb. So that's the. And then even we did a very small, nice documentation with the Muslim woman, because it's difficult to get into the localities with the camera and to take the pictures of the community. So what we did give a camera to those Muslim women and ask them to shoot the pictures of themselves. So it was easy to have. So these are the first time we've seen inside images from Kurla and other localities of the Muslim community.
Incidentally, we also started our own mapping exercise last year, mumbaiculturemap.com, for exactly that, that people don't know. So we didn't know until we began this project that there were 180 cultural spaces in the city. But if you go to mumbaiculturemap.com now, you will actually map them on the city. I'm sure there are many more. There are 180 that we found over the past year. So, mapping with, I guess, with everyone, once you discover mapping in whatever format, it opens portals to, so many possibilities. But I want to actually now shift a little to dangers, because mapping is good. It helps us navigate safely. It helps us recover treasures, remember histories, and so on. But there's also dangers. For example, when you are documenting marginalized communities, or when you are documenting histories which are contested. So I want to ask each of you, how important is positionality as well as politics in all your work? Because mapping is also deeply political. So I have questions for each of you in this. So Sudharak, with you starting, how do you gain the trust of the community that you're photographing, and how sensitive are you to this idea of marginalization?
I spend a lot of time, and first notion of, uh, I always, I don't say it's we. And second thing is most important is that, yes, I take a side, I stand with them. So the problem is solved, because everybody knows that I'm with these people and not the other side. So I take side in my photographs, in my documenting the stories of people, and I feel, and I say that mostly that these are my people. When I say these are my people, these are my marginalized people. So I'm one of them. That's why that empathy comes in my pictures, because I belong to them. That's where this politics doesn't really interfere in my work, or I don't see any danger, because I'm ready to take it as a journalist, as a photographer, and because my issue is very strong. That issue has a, like, if you see In Search of Dignity, or you see the Kamatipura sexual workers, or I travel around the country for health and many other projects. So I kind of say that these are my people and I'm sharing with you. So the danger is not there when I photograph them.
So deep, extreme subjectivity. You say this is.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and see, you spend time, you talk to them. First of all, we don't have, we don't listen to anybody basically. And we go as a, somebody has, demon has come from the city and you enter. So I always say to people that you have to remove your shoes at the same point where you enter the house, and then the things gets fold for me.
That's really beautiful. Jasmine, I want to ask you the same question in the context of your work, right? By rendering uh, or by highlighting some spaces as safe, could you render, because of that act, other spaces as unsafe for women? And are you restricting women from accessing places that you don't deem safe? So tell us about your politics and how you navigate your danger.
So I do find mapping extremely political, but because I got introduced through Google Maps, and that's something I've been thinking a lot about. That how Google Maps has, and I was talking to Anika before this, that Google Maps has completely ruined maps for us, because people think that's the truth, and that's my fear of maps. That people think what maps says is the truth. So sometimes I'm arguing with my Uber driver when I say that I have a shortcut, and they'll be like, no, no, Google Maps doesn't say that. And it's a very interesting point that why we have started trusting maps, because that's the truth, that's the discourse of knowledge. And so when we are creating these maps, when we are putting this data on the map, I'm aware of the fact that people will think it's the truth. And subjectivity, as somebody who's putting the data on the map, is that I'm completely aware of the fact that subjectivity is very important, but it's not reflected on the map. So even when we were putting pleasure pockets on our maps, we realized that in a way I just told everybody in Delhi that these are the places where single women love to hang out. So oopsie, I didn't think about it when I was mapping that, oh, once I put it out, I thought other women will see it. Oh, it's so nice. Everybody will know where can they go hang out on their own. But there were others also who might just realize the same places. So I'm aware of the fact that, but I think so. I'm going with the hope part and being hopeful with regard to having trust in my fellow citizens of the city. That I think so. We all want a city that is sustainable and it's beautiful and inclusive. So in my head, if I am mapping, because in my head I'm trying to make the experience better for everybody in the map, in that city, and it's a responsibility for all of us. So if there is this fear of the danger, I think that we ourselves have to work around it to how to balance between pleasure and danger. Because I think so it's interesting. Danger is extremely subjective, and I've been taught that over the times that some places that I find were safe were completely dangerous for others, and vice versa. So it's something I'm also unlearning with time.
I love your optimism. I share it hesitantly, but I love it. And I want to ask you this, Anika, as well, because a lot of the communities that say you're working or you're trying to help, right? Everyone has great intentions, even Global Explorer. But what are the ethics of ownership when it comes to communities that don't want attention called to themselves? Given what happened with, say, Discovery Channel and Ram Setu in terms of mapping, how do you navigate politically contentious areas, or could someone manipulate, say, your data to serve their own interests, given the kind of work you do and given that you're working with governments and people?
Yeah, you very rightly put. That's the danger because what we're doing, our mission is to discover and protect, right? So we are using big data here. We're using satellite imagery to find sites. Now, if we found sites and we put it on a map, we're telling the looters, go there, loot, right? So we have the thing has to go hand in hand where we discover and then protect it. The platform is completely online. What data we do find, we do not release it to the public immediately, even though it's for public good, but it is to be released for the government. It is up to the government how they release it to the public. So it's a collation exercise. The other thing that we will do in terms of protecting, and this is where I think the next section of your panel discussion might discuss, is the technology, is to go and scan these sites. Now, if the community angle is a choice. If they do not wish to engage, they do not wish to engage. We cannot pursue it any further. However, our due diligence is to go and scan that entire temple or archaeological site, put each artifact, including the missing one, on the server so that our machine learning can spot that, oh, this dimension of a missing piece of sculpture is found in an auction house in Iran, and maybe it could be from there. So it is literally data collection. It is certain facts of this will be released to the public, but it depends on security, on national security.
We're going to talk about technology in a while, but I want to hark back to something that Sudharak said. Why when he's doing what he does in terms of mapping and memories, and in a sense that's what all of us are doing, right? I mean, it's pleasures and possibilities, it's objects, archaeology. What is archaeology if not deep memory? And what you're doing with the photographs you make. But memory, when we talk about, when we historicize memory, we sometimes write over certain memories or we project certain memories to the forefront. So, Jasmine, I want to ask with you, right? I want to start with you. How do mental maps, even these maps of memories, change as cities undergo development, especially for women that are from, say, a caste or a class that might complicate their access to private spaces or the kind of pleasure pockets that you want to highlight?
I think so, like memories, nostalgia. I mean, I think so that these are relationships that have gone drastically different over time. Like, I find it interesting, like, so right now we are mapping in Bangalore and we are mapping public health centers. So we audit public health centers looking for abortion clinics there and how good are the services. And we have realized that in Bangalore, there's a first generation, a lot of first generation of college goers, girls specifically, who are willing to make those movement within the city because they don't have money. So if they need some access to health services, or if they want to get an abortion, they can't afford a 25,000 abortion in a private clinic. So they're willing to make that movement and move within Bangalore, you know. And it's interesting for me because these are the people who are teaching me, who have stayed in Bangalore for 5 years, that, oh, maybe while you were mapping, you didn't realize there were also some temples nearby. I didn't see that. And I realized that because when I was looking at that spot, because with my lens, with my auditing skills, I was looking for very specific functional stuff. Whereas with they came in, they were looking for, because they were in a crisis mode, they were looking for an abortion service. They noticed other things. So this is something we have been also been realizing, that we have to keep updating our own mapping that we are doing. But these memories and these stories that are coming up, because I keep saying that these user experience really matters. That I think so. We are all, I don't know. I think so. My generation. I'm currently 30. So this generation is you're so used to being customers. We are taught being consumers all the time that we've forgotten that we're allowed to create our own memories. So Google, Instagram, Facebook does not really define our memories. We can also add something onto it.
We are allowed to create. I just had, yes, we are allowed to create our own memories. Wow, thank you. I'm gonna go back and relook at my Instagram and just see what am I putting out there. But I want to take that a little ahead and talk about, can be complicated with caste and class, and are you seeing different sets of memories based on the people's own subjectivities? If you can talk a little bit about that.
So with regard, so because the topic that we work on, sexual and reproductive health, is extremely taboo, and this is where I'm even what is the word, problematizing even the word caste, because I think so we are all given some stereotypes about caste, be it from any caste, and we're all playing with those stereotypes. So even when I'm providing service, and even when I'm telling people, because I've realized when in the beginning when I was telling people, oh, you can go to a public health center, you can go to a private clinic, those were the times I realized how wrong I understood caste. So there might be people from lower caste who are willing to give more money just for the heck for getting better service. There might be people from upper caste, they were willing to give money, but for a very different reason. So these are the times when I personally understood how people negotiate these spaces of caste, class, economics, gender. But at the same time, I also realized that like pushing people to come to East Delhi has a lot of caste angle. Pushing people to come to Bangalore's places where there are communities who stay. I would even push it into religion, because I'm aware that why some specific places and cities are considered to be unsafe. It's because people from certain religions are staying there, and it's highly problematic, because in my head, what is happening is you're telling me where can I go, where can I not go, and you're restricting services, and in return you're making me a perfect customer for a private clinic because they would be in my area. So caste, gender, religion, all these things further makes further makes the user experience extremely difficult being in a city.
Thank you. Anika, I want to ask you about, again, Global Explorer is doing something very, very important in shifting the power of discovery, right, from academics to citizens. Tell us how this is actually changing the very act of historicizing and creating history.
I guess it's allowing people to participate in their own history to begin with. I don't know how many archaeologists personally do you know right now amongst your peer group, amongst people you meet, other than the Archaeological Survey of India or someone teaching at the university. I know very few. I studied archaeology for a long time. And one of the other things, other than the mapping and other than engaging with these sites from a digital platform, is also making archaeology a relevant field, a place where there are jobs, a place where a person who spent so much money studying, field survey and all of that, going to a site and engaging. And right now we don't have those opportunities. So in this particular project, that's one of the focus areas also. I mean, for the lack of a better word, archaeology is definitely not a very sexy job opportunity, right? But it can be. And people can participate. And as citizen archaeologists, when you go to this digital platform and you feel like you're helping the country doing something in a very small way, almost gamifying that thing, but you feel like you're part of something that motivates you to go to that site maybe later on. And that's how I studied art history and archaeology. I went to study South Asian temples. I found myself studying Khmer temples just because I was fascinated studying in LSR in history. I never learned about Southeast Asian art history and archaeology. I was so fascinated about the Indian connection that I just focused on that. So I think it's giving people that opportunity to kind of explore that. And there aren't many platforms here in India doing that, other than the fundamental duty of protecting these sites and discovering these sites and putting together infrastructure that the state or the government can use.
Thank you. I just love that idea of sexifying it. I'm just thinking back of archaeologists I know. I'm just thinking of Indiana Jones and Lara Croft.
There aren't any in India. We need to make some.
So both were damn sexy now that I'm thinking about it.
But I must tell you about this one individual who is doing fantastic work, and I think he's come in the news quite often. I don't know if you've been noticing, a lot of repatriation is happening in the country. This dialogue about looted treasures in museums abroad, and it's a complicated debate. It's a very complicated debate because if we make repatriation, then the British Museum would be empty, right? The colonizers would suffer a lot. So staying away from that debate, there is this one guy called S. Vijay Kumar. He's come out with a book called The Iroh Thief. I don't know if you guys know of him, but he's a logistics guy sitting in Singapore from Tamil Nadu. He went to his neighborhood temple one day and noticed his favorite sculpture, an Ardhanarishwara, half Shiva, half Parvati, was suddenly missing. He just saw it 15 years ago. After 2 years of searching, he found it at the Australian National Museum. Just this year, that was returned. And it was because of his vigilante activism on India Pride Project, or I think he runs a blog called Poetry in Stone, that he got it. The other thing, Subhash Kapoor, a huge gallerist in Manhattan, Fifth Avenue, right now is sitting in Chennai jail. When he was caught by Interpol, Homeland Security, S. Vijay Kumar, ASI, and Idle Police in Chennai, they tagged him as the largest commodities smuggler in the world at the time. And they had just found one warehouse of antiquities. It was valued at $100 million. So this kind of stuff and this platform that he's running India Pride, citizen driven. People are going to museums and taking pictures and then seeing it come after 1970 or whatever. So this is all, it's a complicated web, and stuff is happening and cultural treasures are coming back, and then you can look at the economics of it. So it's a very exciting space to be in, and I'm quite excited that so many citizen movements are coming. You and I can go to a museum and ask more questions about a piece of sculpture and tag it to a temple complex, probably. I keep saying temple, that's so exclusive, but an archaeological site close to where we're from, and become part of that history, become part of that human history.
Can you tell us where to sign up? I'm so excited right now.
Do we just go to India Pride Project and sign up as a volunteer. Although I don't work for them, I keep because I and you must get this book, The Iroh Thief. It's like a detective novel, but it's a true story.
And we are number one at one more thing. We are number one at robbing temples and archaeological. We have the number one.
We're considered the number one source country in the world.
Should we clap for that, or should we hide our faces in shame? Let's not clap for that, but hopefully with Global Xplorer and everything else, we will move down that.
Hopefully there will be instruments that can help us protect. That's the mission, really.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for all the great, for the incredible work. Sudharak, I have a question for you related to mapping and memory. With all the work that's happening right now, right? There's so much. I mean, when you started as a photographer, it was something very exclusive. There were photographers. Now everyone is a photographer because of cell phones and everything else. So is this, given that everyone is doing photography and video documentation, is it changing the way in which we discover places in the city or in the country that we, might never visit or know of by ourselves, because we're just seeing it all around us on people's Instagram and just other feeds? And does the fact that there's no place to randomly or serendipitously stumble upon anymore, given that every place, I'm thinking of, Baudrillard and Simulacra, and when he went to Times Square, and he'd seen Times Square so many times that it didn't seem like a new place, although it was the first time he was there. So, given that we're seeing so many images, um, does this act increase the distance between between you and what you're seeing, given that you've probably seen it so many times?
No, actually didn't. See, this new younger generations coming and shooting. This new lot of new things are coming up with different angle, different light, different equipments. Now drone is introduced. I mean, our time there was no drone, so we had to go to the top angle building and shoot the pictures. So this lot of things have changed over the year. But at the same time, the role of the photographer remains the important, because as we have growing as a different mapping and documenting, there's a lot of garbage has been also coming collecting at the same time, and that seeing is missing. So that will remain the fact of how you look at the things and how you take it and how you produce and how you get to the end user. So that will not change. Even so many photographers can come on one side and shoot many, but that sensitive one person will bring something, will amaze for the years.
And that will never change.
Yes, all the time.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about technology and then open up, to the audience. I want to ask each of you about the future of mapping. And please, everyone who's here and seeing this online, this is just a very small representation of mapping which is happening. When we were curating this, we went through so many possibilities. People are mapping sounds, people are mapping food, people are mapping, everything possible. And that's what makes mapping really so exciting at this particular moment, right? Think of all their projects as just three small slivers in the universe of mapping. So my question to all of you is, tell us about the future of mapping in general, both linked to what you're doing and what you're seeing other people doing. What is its potential? Where do you think we can go with mapping, from now onwards? Do you want to start?
I have a philosophical answer to that, but I'll stick to this particular, because that can go on for a long time. But I'll tell you, I'm, as what you've said about Google Maps, it does something to the way you look at maps. If I open my Google Maps on my phone, you'll find a million golden stars everywhere. And that's because I have this habit of tagging any place, a place I've gone to, a place I've seen, a place I've eaten at, tagging it and saving it for my memory. So the future of mapping is how you can use it and also store your personal memories on it. In terms of the project that I'm working for, this entire mapping exercise links to a blockchain, and a blockchain. I don't know how many of you know about what a blockchain is, but easily described, it's an online ledger, like a register that we have. And once you made an entry, you cannot change it. Whatever the nature of that entry would be, transactional, non-transactional. In terms of antiquities, it's a very organic thing, because we want to know that this sculpture was in this site at this date. And if it's not there, at least we have a record that is immutable, can never be changed, that it was there on this date. And if movement of art, for example, is happening from a gallery to a museum, then you record that movement of the blockchain and you have that security and insurance that your art is being moved around securely. So the data linkages of these maps to systems that can record the evolution of these maps is, I think, also very important. It's like a history textbook. It shows you how that map is evolved, how Google Maps or Apple Map looked 5 years ago to how it is. It records that evolution. And I think that is an important thing to think about when we're talking about the future of mapping as well.
Excellent. That's
Okay. I think so. With regard to future of mapping, I'm an optimist who is very very focused on making things sustainable. So in my head, if the mapping has to definitely move on to different platforms, so not just Google Maps but OpenStreetMaps, Map.me, Waze. For the simple reason, I feel like all this data that we as the consumers are collecting and plotting, that's a lot of hard work, and I don't see ourselves getting paid for this. So either as users who are putting the data up, either we start getting paid for this, or we get a customized service which really helps us navigate our cities better. because that's because I think so. It's important for us to also understand that this public data, which is already there, it's the responsibility of civic agencies or the organizations who are providing us these services to provide it. That's the responsibility. So I find it extremely funny when we are getting charged. So I'm coming in the middle way where I'm saying that okay, maybe for some of the data that I'm putting my energy on, I should get paid, and Google can share reduce its profit margin by say by 0.0001%. So that's something I am really very realistic seeking as a future of mapping.
As I said, I love your optimism. Is there anyone from Google in the room? Are they like,
Actually, I've talked to Google Maps, and they're actually fine because I think so. They are looking at because I think that China will very soon will come up with that model, so they are scared.
and then Google will follow.
Yeah, I have a different thing on it. That whatever is coming, the dialogue has to be started, with the civic bodies, with the authorities, and unless and until the dialogue with the people, with the community, with the participation is not there, this data will not be useful at all. So, what all of us have a time now to question this, whatever is coming up in front of you, segregate that information and make a point to 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 change the things.
I think I agree with you. I think mapping plays a very significant role in advocacy and
Absolutely,
activism, and
yes.
it's collection of evidence. You see,
It's evidence. It's everything is there, and you have to just segregate it in information which you have, and make it a compartment, and then go back. Ask the question why we're not asking question to the civic bodies, authorities, anywhere. Like you see, she was talking about the archaeology sites of the country, and they are pathetic condition. They are pathetic. I've been to almost each and every site in the country. There's nobody, no youngster or no person is looking at those sites. Again, the cast is very beautiful. I'll tell the example of caves in Maharashtra. It's 2,000 years old caves. Nobody goes there. Nobody. Even the archaeology department will put that one plaque there. This site is this, and the work is finished. So unless and until with this all thing, I think we have to really make a point for this all changes, which will be very important in coming years. As it's going, as everything is erasing very fast also.
So if I can build on that and ask all of you the same thing, how do we increase that access? How do we democratize that access? Because a lot of all these technologies, so I mean, your work, which comes in newspapers or with Lokmat, etc., reaches a wider audience. But whether it's Hidden Pockets or Global Explorer, so many of these other projects, they're limited to people with certain kinds of cultural or economic or language capital. How do we really get it out there to mainstream some of these mapping efforts so that we can move into this positive and not dystopian future?
make a noise about it. The field of landscape of archaeology is a still water pond with algae on top of it. So shake it a little bit. But the thing is, I agree with you when you say that these are barren sites. These are sites that are nobody goes. And I must confess, I went to Nalanda Gaya this time, and I was going around. For me, I've studied art history and archaeology for such a long time that I can spot when this is not from here. This is a replacement. It's a fake, and that's what happens also. Even in those caves, in many caves across Maharashtra, which I have mapped, I've gone and seen that they have chiseled out the sculpture and put a fake there. And to your point, I want to say that once you go to that place, you increase traffic a little bit, and this will take a very long time. But when you increase traffic, when you start talking about archaeological treasure, archaeological sites as these real big repositories of history, slowly people will listen. And I'm not trying to be optimistic. I'm just trying to say that we have something interesting there. Go see it. Go to the mall, go to the theater, go hang out there also. There is something special
They're
over there
beautiful
too.
places actually. You can spend a whole day there in those caves
And they're fantastically inspirational places, beautifully constructed. And even thinking about the intelligence and the design that goes behind South Asian ancient to medieval architecture is fascinating. I got interested in it because I thought it was the most fantastical rendition of human intellect back in the early BC and the late CEs. It blows my mind. And talking about it in that light, where you treat people, you're smart, you will like this, and I want to tell you about this, and then they will feel more interested.
I'm sold again. Where do I sign up?
um, I genuinely think that the future of content is not internet. I do think it's a mixture of both offline and online. And I say this because I feel there's a lack of scene in the content itself. And I think so we are saturated with content. So I mean, I have personally reached a stage where I can't take in images anymore, and I've been thinking about it. Why is that? Because I'm fed with images. Because I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, I'm fed with images. So I'm aware of the fact that the future is not internet. It has to be a combination of both. So even in our work, when we actually do public auditing, so we ourselves go to places. So we were looking for one-stop crisis centers. So basically, these are centers that were supposed to be established by Nirbhaya Fund for rape survivors. So we went into Jaipur and we were actually looking for a clinic. So we took the bus, traveled within Jaipur, found the clinic, had that experience, and then we realized this was far better than Delhi. And looking at internet, I couldn't find any data or any content speaking this or even reflecting this experience. So clearly, there needs to be a balance of both offline and online where you use technology to the extent it can help you. But it's not the content. The content is still very much on the ground. And I feel like we are in India, the land of stories, the land of we have reached a stage where people know Priyanka Chopra, but nobody knows who's Nick Jonas. So that's something saying about India. So we are at the right time. No, so we are no more the consumers. I think so. It's not even patriotism. This is something going beyond that. We have to understand our own power, saying that we are no more the consumers. We are the creators. But this is a good point for us to reflect also. What are we creating? Are we really thinking about it? Do we have enough reflection? Because that seeing is missing, and we are just seeing replicas of the same thing. It's a good juncture to be in.
Yeah, the reflection is not there actually. That's exactly, and unless and until we don't go to the communities, it's not going to help. We will not reach. So last month we did a small exercise. We photographed one village in Konkan region, and for 1 year, over the 1 year, and after 1 year we took all the pictures and we went to the villages to put them and then give them the so they have that images now, and they can show it to the world that look, we are here. It's a small hundred of in Konkan. So unless and until we don't go to the community, it's not going to change anything.
Technology with participation.
Participation.
And as Jasmine says, what are we, what are we creating using these technologies? Um, I can keep on chatting here forever, but we have lots of films to see. So this is time when you raise your hand slowly and elegantly, and we bring the mic up to you.
Thank you all for your comments and conversations. And I think it was implicit in most of the conversations and certainly in, I think, Parmesh's questions. But I'm reminded of Audre Lorde's Can the Master's Tools Dismantle the Master's House? And I think mapping and the kinds of technologies we have are created by certain forces for certain purposes, then yes, we can bend them, but there's already a built-in logic. And then how do we address that? And as I said, you all touched on it, but I guess in some ways Sudharak did most, I guess, explicitly in terms of dealing with communities and equalities. But I also see that these tools of mapping have a particularly built-in logic of neoliberal capitalism, and what are we going to do with it?
Thank you.
Can I respond to that? Actually, yes, I think so. I mean, when I got into mapping, my initial introduction was Google, and then I ended up realizing it's so limiting. And then I got into cartography, and then I realized, and I started talking to my grandparents who told me that obviously they knew the maps of their area in their head, and then they told me obviously in every outside every village they used to create their own maps. So people had that skill. So I'm very aware, and I think so. This is not my obsession with Google, that but Google works. All these great enterprises work with anthropologists. because they have been working with communities, with participation, and all this idea of maps is coming from communities. It's just that the form has come in the form has changed.
Well, but then Google is the one that benefits. Google is the one that's making profits. So
I completely,
underlying...
I completely agree. But I'm just saying, cartography maybe not have been called maps, but the form was there. I mean, we all. I mean, what is the? I don't know what's the word. The imperialists, they came in and they used this.
True, but that's the danger, right? That what were maps used for control, for domination, and to the extent that we make this available, there's also that angle to it.
And that's what we touched upon, right? With each of them, if you know what are pleasure pockets, and if you want to perpetrate violence against women, and you have a map in which women are coming to these pleasure pockets, you have a toolkit of where to go. Likewise, if you're an international, antiquities smuggler, and suddenly you have, Global Explorer telling you
have access to this, but
Okay.
I must
Yeah.
speak to this whole group of deal. There are these coalitions of dealers and smugglers, and it's a highly sophisticated network. I must tell you, if you read this book or read this other book called Chasing Aphrodite, it basically recounts how the entire Getty collection was built, and you will notice that these guys who are operating with antiquities right now. Look, the farmer who's tilling his field, there were vast rituals for burying important idols in the ground for the Hindus when invasions used to happen. And now, in present day, a farmer is tilling his field. He's found a bronze idol, a Shiva Nataraja. What does he do? The only option he has is to sell it, right? Now, this act of mapping goes beyond. It engages with the community, engages with big data, engages with education. But as a result of it, the ripple effect is to give them another option as well, to incentivize when they return that treasure to the state, because legally it belongs to the state. If you find it in a land, it doesn't belong to you, even if it's on your land. It's state property if it's an antiquity thing that you find. So there are several legal ramifications. The problem statement that it addresses is not just smuggling, but also a comptroller, auditor general's report on the Archaeological Survey of India that you don't have the digital infrastructure. So this mapping exercise is that fundamental exercise that ASI should have done a long time ago. The poor things have not done it, So there are several entities that are coming. Now, Tata Trust, Google, I understand, is a for-profit organization. Tata Trust is a philanthropic organization that actually has no business returns on something like this, according to their mandate. They have to give it for public good. And I have spent an entire year doing due diligence in answering that question. How is it serving the public, the citizens of India? And justifying it to the Archaeological Survey of India and the Ministry of Culture. And now that they see value, they're like, yes, we need this. They will not release it to the public. You and I are looking at tiles to see looting, but you will not see the entire map of archaeological sites, even though you can see it on the Bhuvan website. The ISRO has mapped the existing Archaeological Survey of India sites. But the sites that we will discover, we will not release it to everyone. That is for the government to keep as a repository, lock it up and keep it in the safe.
Very good. I love that question. Yeah.
I was actually going to build upon that question and go right off what you were saying, that mapping and cartography is essentially a colonial art, and it's been used for centuries for control. And the very nature and the logic of the map is one of extraction, and therefore it plays into a very certain kind of power dynamic that exposes itself to manipulation. So I think what came to mind most immediately was when you show pictures of East Delhi, or you show life in East Delhi, the one thing that you open it up to is gentrification. And what do you do when communities don't want to be mapped? What do you do when communities don't want to be seen? Because exposure, especially when vulnerable, lower class, lower caste, enables occupying forces to swoop in and exoticize them and then eventually transform them, which is happening even today, and I think aided a lot by photography, unfortunately, wherein all of us are participating in a sort of poverty tourism and voyeurism, wherein I was at Shivaji Park on Mahaparinirvan Divas, and in addition to the 3 lakh people there, there were some 20,000 tourists who had come clicking pictures of everything that's happening there, completely transforming the event and the neighborhood itself in the process. So I'm wondering, how do you defy the logic of the map, which is inherently extractive and fits into those power dynamics when you are putting so much content out there? And how do we also combat this new style of photography, which a lot of photographers are moving away from, like showcasing people's faces and going towards new styles that don't allow for that sort of exploitation, to preserve these projects and make them ethical?
Jasmine, before you answer that, can I just say that this is what a Culture Lab alumni sounds like. So, can we please, Anisha has worked at a Culture Lab and curated events, and we just feel so proud when they ask such beautiful questions. So, thank you. If any of you is interested in working with us, work with us, and then you will sound like this and ask good questions. So, thank you.
I simply love the plugins. Simply love it.
Yes.
So I'm
Gentle plugging.
Gentle, smoothly done. No, so I actually want to say that with regard to East Delhi, I grew up in East Delhi, and it was actually a very personal response to say that my place is not unsafe. So I was not exhaustizing. I was actually telling my own story. I grew up in East Delhi, and it's important. That's something even I have realized that where when I'm going to a public health clinic, I'm actually telling them I use this service because when I'm talking to my users, they are looking for something more. I'm not practo. I'm not somebody just telling you these are the clinics. I'm not responsible for you. You can use it. We take at Hidden Pockets. We take it very seriously because in my head, public health clinics is public data, which should have been easily available. I don't have to file. I should not be forced to file RTIs to understand where are the PHCs in my area. How many of us know PHCs in our areas? How is that we are so ignorant about it? And I go back to my generation because I keep having this conversation with my dad. My dad knew the police stations nearby. He knew the where are the courts, where are the public health hospitals. I was in a mapping party once where I remember people were asking which are the things that we want to map, and the requests were theaters, restaurants. This was the first reaction. But nobody asked for health clinics. Nobody asked for police stations. And I was thinking in my head, how is that we've reached a stage where we think of cities as pub centers? And it's saddening at some level. So I'm actually like, so even when we are talking to public data movement, we are very, very active with them because we are telling them we have all this public data, but it's useless because nobody knows about them. It's sitting in some government archaic website which nobody knows how to use it. And by the time we get the data out, it's so boring. And also, again, social media has made it so beautifully, it has made us so, what's the word, immune to anything which is not beautiful, that we will not look at numbers. We don't want to use our brain. So map seem to be the most convenient. I mean, if I put it on the map, maybe in my optimistic sense, they'll look at it, maybe. But I was also aware of the fact that I was doing free data mapping for Google Maps. So I shifted to OpenStreetMap because it was run by community. People, techies, or people who really wanted data to be free, because we are all scared that one day after mapping all of this on Google, Google might just say start paying for it. So a lot of us shifted our data from Google Maps to OpenStreetMap, saying that it belongs to us, it belongs to the government, and I would rather put the data there. So completely aware of the politics of map, but at the same time also aware of the fact that people are thinking Google Maps, or for that matter, map is the truth, it's the discourse of the truth. And while I'm trying to challenge it and debate about it, I have to be very realistic that where are my clients going? If I'm not there, they won't know about it. So I have to negotiate and navigate between these spaces, but completely aware of it.
Thank you. Sudharak, can you answer that as well? Because even with your work, yesterday also, right? People were saying, are you exotifying? Are you, is there a double-edgedness to the work that you do?
Too long question. I'll just answer one small segment of it. That it's you have to be just sensitive to pass this information, and until that sensitivity is not there, please don't release them. Don't release them. What we have seen earlier film or many photographers around the country, and it's a very quick device. No, you stand and you shoot, and there's what you don't need consent, you don't need time, you don't need relationship, you don't build anything. There's no communication, but immediately picture, and it's already uploaded also at the same time. Without anything. With wrong hashtags, completely wrong hashtags. And so unless and until that sensitivity is not there, it will not go to the reach correct people. And that's what again is the whole point of this. All information coming up and how much you want to take it and how much you want to use it. Like you said, Mahaparivan, you went yesterday. Um, uh, it's become tourism now because of like if you go 25 years back, there's hardly any photographers in the community itself. So now we have each and one has a camera or mobile phone. So that you have to be sensitive when you're shooting of any individual person. I always say in my workshop that should when you take a picture, you should know one thing that how you will like your wife and a daughter's pictures to be photographed. You should photograph the same way of any other woman in public places. That should be the sensitivity to release that information.
Do we have time for one? Yeah, one more.
So this is specifically for Global Explorer, the service. So anybody can report sort of theft of archaeological treasures.
On the platform.
Yeah.
So there are different ways of doing it. Yes, anybody can, first, simple answer to your question, anybody can and should report thefts of archaeological treasures. How you do it in your state is that you go to your state government and the Archaeological Survey of India field office over there and you report it over there. You have to take a copy of your complaint and keep it with yourself. Use social media to promote that complaint as well. That's number one. Number two, India Pride Project. That's another place where not only you report it, but you get yourself involved in actually finding that piece of sculpture or whatever that is stolen. On Global Explorer, you use satellite imagery to look at the surface of the earth, to notice if digging is happening there. You're not zooming inside temples, and there is no complaint portal over there. However, the website, when it launches officially in India, will give you a step-by-step tutorial as to how you can report a particular theft as well.
So how are those defined as like only
Anything that
ASI?
is over than 100 years old is an archaeological or cultural treasure of this country that cannot be imported outside this country.
Does it apply to like mountains which are being mined in like say Odisha?
That's a natural resource. It is not, the law is old and it is being refurbished right now as we speak, and it's not completely inclusive, but there is a generic line that says anything of cultural importance that is more than 100 years old. What you're speaking of is a natural resource that comes under a different law.
Yeah, but what a beautiful question, and what a beautiful orientation of imagining. I mean, right? Because for many of us, mountains are also culture. Yeah. So this distinction also, I think, it harks back to who has made these distinctions, right? What is natural? What is a cultural resource?
So like the indigenous people of India, they hold
Correct.
these mountains as sacred, and it's their cultural. So the thing is, cultural heritage is also narrowly defined in our country.
Completely. And going back to again your question of who has done this classification for us, in which we are all operating.
Funnily enough, this classification first happened, and that's where the archaeological landscape kind of did not completely develop and has not yet developed. Archaeological Survey of India was founded when the British were on their way out, and they formed this very generic, short, I think 5 or 6 pager rule book or antiquity law. Now it's being reworked, but it is still their language and it is broad. Actually, if you look at it and you read between the lines, it's quite broad. The Banjaras who carry their personal treasures on them, those are also of antiquarian value. But some people think they're included, they're not included. So the law is being reworked. And if I was to give my personal opinion, it's being reworked, but still is not robust enough. But what do you do? What can I do about it? I can still continue my mapping and participate in advocacy. So.
Which is what we are doing right now. And on that note, what can we all do to end? We can continue these conversations, but we will continue them now off stage.